The apartment was a symphony of muted tones and precise angles. A minimalist haven Amelia had curated with the same meticulousness she applied to her datasets. Every book on the shelf was aligned by height, every cushion plumped to perfection on the charcoal sofa. Yet, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and violet, the silence within her meticulously ordered world became a deafening presence. Tonight, like many nights, the soft glow of her laptop screen was her sole companion at the dinner table. The rhythmic click of her fork against the porcelain plate was the only sound echoing in the stillness, each small noise amplified by the quiet. She chewed slowly, mindlessly, her gaze fixed on lines of code scrolling across the screen, a language she understood far better than the nuances of human connection. Amelia Thorne was a data scientist, a quiet prodigy in a world of bustling egos and loud declarations. She moved through life with a gentle efficiency, her brilliance often overshadowed by her unassuming demeanor. Colleagues at Quantum Insights, where she untangled complex algorithms for high-profile clients, respected her analytical prowess, but rarely ventured beyond work-related pleasantries. Her social circle was a modest circumference, anchored by Clara, her vibrant, free-spirited best friend, who lived 3 states away but remained a constant source of digital sunshine. For Amelia, human interaction was a delicate dance, a series of unspoken cues she often struggled to decipher. Numbers, on the other hand, were absolute. They spoke a universal truth, logical and predictable, a stark contrast to the bewildering unpredictability of emotions. She pushed her half-eaten meal aside, the lingering hunger a faint ache compared to the deeper, more pervasive one she rarely acknowledged. It was a hunger for connection, a quiet longing that pulsed beneath the surface of her calm exterior. But acknowledging it felt like opening a Pandora's box, unleashing a torrent of vulnerability she wasn't prepared to face. So, she retreated, as always, into the comforting embrace of her work. The elegant logic of algorithms, a soothing balm to the unspoken ache. The next morning, the city hummed with its usual frenetic energy. Amelia, nestled in her usual corner cafe, nursed a lukewarm latte, her gaze drifting towards the chaotic ballet of commuters. A young woman, no older than 20, stumbled out of the grocery store across the street, laden with overflowing paper bags. Her phone, clutched precariously in one hand, slipped from her grasp and landed with a disheartening splash in a shallow puddle. A soft groan escaped the woman's lips, her shoulders slumping in defeat as a ripe tomato rolled out of a torn bag and bounced into the street. Before she could even consciously decide, Amelia found herself rising from her seat. Her movements were swift, almost instinctive. She crossed the street, her eyes scanning for oncoming traffic, her mind already calculating the quickest, safest path. The young woman looked up, her eyes wide with a mixture of frustration and embarrassment. "Oh no," she exclaimed, staring at her submerged phone. Amelia didn't hesitate. She knelt, her long fingers, usually navigating keyboards with expert precision, delicately plucking the phone from the murky water. She wiped it carefully on her sleeve. Then, remembering the stray tomato, she retrieved it from the curb. "It looks like it might be okay," she said, her voice soft but steady. And this little guy almost made a break for it. A small, genuine smile touched her lips. The young woman, flustered, tried to juggle her remaining bags. Amelia, noticing a fresh tear on another bag, reached into her own messenger bag and produced a neatly folded reusable tote. "Here," she offered. "This might help." The woman's face brightened with relief and gratitude. "Oh my gosh, thank you so much. You're a lifesaver. I can't believe I dropped everything." She fumbled for her purse. "Let me pay you for the bag, or at least get you a coffee." Amelia gently waved her hand. "Don't worry about it. Just glad I could help." She offered another brief, reassuring smile. Then, with a quiet nod, She turned and walked back to her cafe table, leaving the young woman beaming in her wake. It was a small act, almost insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but a quiet warmth settled in Amelia's chest. It was a rare, uncomplicated moment of genuine connection, a gentle reminder that even in her ordered world, there was space for spontaneous kindness. She often felt invisible, but for a fleeting moment, she had been truly seen and had, in turn, offered help without expectation. This was Amelia, quietly competent, inherently kind, always ready to extend a hand, even when no one was watching. Later that evening, as a gentle rain tapped against her window pane, Amelia found herself staring at the faint, silvery line on her left wrist. It was a faded scar, a relic from a childhood fall during an intense coding session. She'd been so engrossed in debugging a particularly stubborn program, she hadn't noticed the loose floorboard in her family's old farmhouse. It was a small, almost imperceptible mark, a physical testament to a long-held passion, a tiny secret held close. Even then, as a gangly teenager, she'd possessed an almost obsessive focus, a fierce determination to solve problems, to understand the intricate workings of the digital world. The scar was a quiet whisper from a past where her mind had been a whirlwind of algorithms in her world, a complex puzzle waiting to be solved. She traced the line with a finger, a faint memory stirring, then pushed it back, her gaze returning to the clean lines of her keyboard, to the endless possibilities that lay hidden within the silent hum of her machine. The digital world was her sanctuary, her canvas, a place where she felt truly, uniquely herself. The subtle encouragement from Clara, her best friend, had been percolating in Amelia's mind for weeks. Seriously, Amy. Clara had chirped during one of their sporadic video calls, her face a bright, animated square on Amelia's screen. You spend more time debugging code than you do living. There's a whole world out there. And maybe, just maybe, someone out there is looking for you. Clara, ever the optimist, had sent her a link to Viridian Connect, the hottest new dating app, renowned for its advanced AI matching. The app boasted a revolutionary algorithm that promised to transcend superficial swipes, delving deep into personality traits, shared values, and even subtle psychological nuances to find truly compatible partners. It was, in Clara's words, the future of love. Amelia, initially resistant to the idea of outsourcing her romantic life to a string of code, found herself intrigued by the technical premise, an advanced AI, designed to understand human connection. It was a challenge to her own data-driven sensibilities, a puzzle waiting to be dissected, and beneath the logical curiosity, a quiet yearning pulsed. She was tired of the silence, of the solitary meals, of the neatly ordered life that sometimes felt more like a meticulously constructed cage. So, one crisp Saturday afternoon, armed with a freshly brewed cup of herbal tea and a rare flicker of hope, Amelia decided to dive in. Creating her profile was an exercise in self-reflection. She approached it with the same precision she would a complex algorithm, carefully selecting photos that weren't overly filtered but still presented her in the best light. She answered the myriad of personality questions with a meticulous honesty that bordered on forensic detail. Her hobbies, reading obscure astrophysics papers, deciphering ancient puzzles, long solitary walks in botanical gardens, were perhaps not conventionally exciting, but they were authentically her. She described her ideal partner not with flowery prose, but with a clear outline of desired characteristics: intellectual curiosity, quiet humor, a deep respect for personal space, and an appreciation for the subtle beauty of a well-structured argument. No mention of movie nights or candlelit dinners. For Amelia, compatibility resided in the shared silence, the unspoken understanding. She spent nearly 3 hours meticulously crafting her digital self, a reflection she hoped would resonate with the elusive algorithm. When she finally hit submit, a strange cocktail of apprehension and anticipation bubbled within her. She closed her laptop, the screen going dark, reflecting her own anxious gaze back at her. The silence of the apartment felt different now. No longer a void, but a space filled with silent expectation. Days turned into a week, then two. Each morning, Amelia checked her email with a cautious eagerness she rarely allowed herself to feel. Nothing. The Viridian Connect app icon sat dormant on her phone, a quiet accusation. Clara called, bubbly and inquisitive. Any matches? Amy, spill the tea. Amelia mumbled vague, non-committal answers, her disappointment a bitter taste on her tongue. She tried to distract herself, diving back into her work with a renewed intensity, but a sliver of her attention remained tethered to the app, to the silent promise of connection. Was her profile not good enough? Was her data too singular? The questions gnawed at her, undermining the quiet confidence she usually found in her own intellect. Then, on a Tuesday morning, precisely 17 days after she submitted her profile, the email arrived. It wasn't a notification of a match, nor a charming introductory message. It was a generic, impersonal email. Stark white text on a blank background. Subject update regarding your Viridian Connect profile. Dear user, we regret to inform you that Viridian Connect's algorithm was unable to find suitable matches for your profile at this time. Our advanced AI endeavors to create the most compatible pairings for our diverse user base. While we appreciate your interest in our platform, our current parameters indicate a difficulty in identifying partners that meet your stated preferences and our compatibility metrics. We wish you the best in your search for connection. Sincerely, the Viridian Connect team. Amelia stared at the screen, a cold knot tightening in her stomach. Unable to find suitable matches. The words echoed in her mind, devoid of warmth or empathy. It wasn't just a rejection, it was an algorithmic dismissal, a declaration by a piece of technology that she was, in essence, unmatchable. The sheer, algorithmic coldness of the rejection felt like a deeply personal affront. It wasn't a no thank you from a person. It was a cold, hard no from a machine. A system she had implicitly trusted to understand data, to understand her. The humiliation washed over her, a hot flush spreading across her cheeks, followed by a familiar pang of loneliness, sharp and acute. It was the same hollow ache she'd felt after countless misunderstandings in social settings, after being overlooked for promotions she quietly deserved, after a past relationship fizzled out because, as her ex had put it, she was too analytical, not spontaneous enough. She felt a familiar urge to retreat, to curl up in the comforting anonymity of her quiet apartment, to erase the very idea of ever seeking connection again. The digital world, usually her sanctuary, had just become a cold, impersonal judge. But then, something shifted. A tiny, almost imperceptible spark ignited deep within her, a flickering ember of defiance she hadn't known was still alive. It wasn't just about a dating app anymore. It was about being dismissed by an algorithm, by technology she understood better than most, by a system that claimed to be advanced, yet clearly failed in its core function. Her analytical mind, honed by years of intricate problem-solving, bristled, unable to find suitable matches. What did that even mean? Was their algorithm truly as advanced as they claimed? Or was there something deeper, something flawed, hidden beneath the shiny veneer of their marketing? This rejection, rather than crushing her completely, awakened a fierce, quiet determination. It poked at her intellectual pride, at her innate need to understand the underlying logic of things. She wasn't just a rejected user. She was a data scientist staring at a puzzling anomaly. The sting of personal insult slowly transformed into the thrill of an intellectual challenge. She wouldn't just accept this. She couldn't. This wasn't about finding love anymore. It was about uncovering the truth. This was her point of no return. She couldn't just go back to her quiet life. to the comforting predictability of her code, without an answer, without understanding why Viridian Connect, the supposed pinnacle of AI matching, had deemed her unmatchable. The silence in her apartment was no longer one of mere expectation, but one of resolute purpose. The game, for Amelia, had just begun. The rejection email from Viridian Connect, once a source of humiliation, had transformed into a meticulous problem for Amelia. Her apartment, typically a bastion of serene order, now hummed with the quiet intensity of a high-tech war room. Monitors glowed with lines of code, network diagrams, and complex data visualizations. Empty coffee mugs formed a small, uncharacteristic tower on her desk, testament to the long hours she'd poured into dissecting the app. This wasn't personal anymore. It was an intellectual challenge, a flawed algorithm demanding to be understood. Amelia started with the publicly available information, sifting through user reviews, forum discussions, and news articles about Viridian Connect. She found a pattern of similar complaints users, particularly those with less conventional interests or highly specific preferences, reporting rejections or a severe lack of matches. It was an interesting anomaly, considering the app's grand claims of advanced AI. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, a blur of motion as she accessed open-source intelligence tools and scoured public databases. She mimicked user interactions, reverse-engineered API calls, and analyzed the data packets exchanged between her phone and the Viridian servers. What she found was subtly disturbing. The algorithm, at its core, wasn't truly AI-driven in the pure sense. It was a sophisticated rule-based system masquerading as deep learning. More concerning were the subtle biases embedded within the code. Not random glitches, but intentional parameters that seemed to filter out profiles deviating from a narrow, predefined ideal. It wasn't about finding compatible matches, it was about finding marketable matches. The app was optimized for engagement, not genuine connection, steering users towards profiles that generated more swipes and ad revenue, rather than fostering meaningful relationships. It was a cynical manipulation disguised as innovation. As she delved deeper, her investigation led her to Viridian Connect's corporate structure. She analyzed investor reports, press releases, and the company's publicly available team profiles. Her gaze skimmed over the familiar corporate jargon, the glowing testimonials, until a specific name caught her eye: Alexander Alex Thorne, CEO and founder. Her breath hitched. The screen seemed to swim for a moment, the complex data fading into the background, replaced by a ghost from her past. It was him, the Alex from her teenage years, not the current polished, charismatic tech mogul grinning confidently from a Forbes magazine cover, but the gangly, brilliant, perpetually distracted Alex who had once been her closest, if somewhat oblivious, friend. They had spent countless hours in his garage, hunched over motherboards, building rudimentary robots, and debating the future of artificial intelligence. He had been her intellectual sparring partner, her confidant in a world that often felt too loud and confusing. He had always been consumed by his grand ambitions, his mind racing light years ahead, rarely pausing to truly see the quiet girl beside him, the one who often understood his cryptic code better than he did. Their friendship had been an unspoken understanding, a shared language of logic and innovation, until he'd left for a prestigious university, and she, a year behind, had drifted into her own specialized corner of the tech world. He had never truly recognized the depth of her feelings, or perhaps simply hadn't cared to. The connection had faded, like a program with a broken link, leaving behind a faint but persistent echo. Now, seeing his face, his name, connected to the very system that had rejected her, a bitter irony twisted in her gut. He had built this flawed, biased, impersonal system, and he hadn't recognized her. Not then. Not now. Even in the very digital realm he controlled. The sting of rejection, once purely algorithmic, now carried the heavy weight of a personal wound. Meanwhile, across town, in the sleek, glass-encased headquarters of Viridian Connect. A high-stakes board meeting was underway. Alexander Thorne, resplendent in a tailored suit, exuded an aura of confident success. He stood before a holographic display, presenting quarterly metrics to a table of stone-faced investors and eager executives. "Our user engagement is at an all-time high," Alex declared, his voice smooth and compelling. "And our monetization strategies are exceeding projections by 15%. Beside him, Julian Vance, Viridian Connect's chief operating officer, watched with a cool, calculating gaze. Julian was sharp, ambitious, and utterly ruthless. He had been with Alex since the early startup days, a loyal lieutenant, but loyalty had curdled into resentment. Julian believed Alex was too naive, too idealistic, still clinging to the human connection rhetoric, while Julian himself was the one truly driving the company's aggressive growth. He saw Alex's public image as a facade, a weakness to be exploited. Julian secretly harbored a deep-seated desire to usurp Alex, to take control of Viridian Connect and mold it entirely in his own image, a cold, profit-driven machine. As Alex flashed a slide showcasing a surge in successful matches, Julian subtly tapped a button on his hidden tablet. The projected numbers shifted fractionally, inflating the success rate even further, while quietly downplaying the increasing volume of customer service complaints related to algorithmic errors and lack of suitable matches. Alex, trusting his COO implicitly, didn't notice the subtle manipulation. Julian then stepped forward, his smile a practiced mask of cordiality. "And to address some minor teething issues," he began, his voice a smooth counterpoint to Alex's earnestness. "We are implementing new user experience enhancement protocols. Our advanced AI is constantly learning, adapting, and refining its ability to manage expectations." The last phrase was delivered with a subtle, almost imperceptible smirk, visible only to those who knew Julian's true nature. He glanced around the room, making eye contact with a few key board members who had quietly expressed concerns about user retention. His implication was clear. The AI was evolving to manage users, not necessarily to serve their deepest needs. One board member, a shrewd venture capitalist named Evelyn Reed, leaned forward. "Julian, are we confident these enhancements won't alienate our core user base?" The appeal of Viridian was its promise of genuine connection, not just fleeting interactions. Julian chuckled. A low, dismissive sound. "Evelyn, in this market, genuine connection is a luxury. What users really want is the illusion of connection, coupled with constant novelty. Our data confirms it. And with the latest updates, our AI is becoming even more adept at providing exactly that." He gestured towards a chart that showed a dramatic increase in time spent on the app, thanks to gamified features and an endless stream of new, albeit superficial, profiles. Julian's eyes gleamed with a cynical triumph. He knew Alex was focused on the grand vision, while Julian himself was expertly handling the gritty, profitable reality. He saw Amelia's very rejection as a validation of his own philosophy, another unmarketable profile efficiently removed from the system. Julian understood human weakness far better than Alex, and he was determined to leverage it for his own gain. The invitation to the Future of Connection Tech Conference shimmered on Amelia's screen, a digital siren call she couldn't ignore. Alex Thorne, the CEO of Viridian Connect, was slated to deliver the keynote address. For Amelia, this wasn't just a conference. It was a battlefield. Her initial shock at discovering Alex's identity had morphed into a steely resolve. This wasn't merely about a personal slight anymore. It was about the integrity of technology, the deceptive promises of an industry she deeply respected. She saw through Viridian Connect's thinly veiled facade, the algorithmic biases designed to prioritize profit over genuine connection, and she was determined to expose it. Her preparation was meticulous, bordering on obsessive. She didn't just review Alex's past speeches and interviews, she analyzed their linguistic patterns, identifying his rhetorical strategies and potential vulnerabilities. She simulated various Q&A scenarios, anticipating his likely deflections and crafting precise, data-backed counterarguments. Her apartment transformed into a strategic command center, each wall adorned with flowcharts detailing Viridian Connect's architecture, annotated screenshots of its problematic code, and a growing dossier on Julian Vance's increasingly suspicious financial maneuvers within the company. Amelia knew she couldn't just walk in and yell fraud. She needed to be surgical, precise, and irrefutable. She rehearsed her questions in front of a mirror, her voice clear and steady, despite the tremor in her hands. The thought of confronting Alex, of seeing him again after all these years, a man who had profoundly influenced her youth yet never truly seen her, filled her with a complex mix of dread and fierce determination. The day of the conference dawned crisp and clear, a stark contrast to the turbulent emotions churning within Amelia. The convention center was a buzzing hive of innovation and self-promotion, a dazzling display of futuristic gadgets and slick presentations. Amelia, dressed in a discreet but professional gray suit, moved through the throng, an almost invisible observer. She found a seat towards the front of the main auditorium, strategically positioned to catch Alex's eye, or at least to be clearly visible during the Q&A session. Every breath felt shallow, every beat of her heart, a drum solo in her ears. When Alex Thorne took the stage, a ripple of excitement went through the crowd. He exuded charisma, his confident smile and effortless charm radiating from the colossal screens flanking the stage. He spoke of reimagining human connection, of bridging divides, and of empowering individuals through AI. His words were polished, inspiring, and utterly devoid of the calculated cynicism Amelia now knew underpinned his creation. She watched him, a ghost of a shared past flickering in her mind. The boy who had once dreamt of changing the world with code, now a man who seemed to have traded that dream for market share. He looked at the audience, at the camera, but never truly saw them, much like he had never truly seen her. The keynote ended to thunderous applause. Then came the Q&A. A microphone stand was wheeled out, and hands shot up across the auditorium. Amelia took a deep, fortifying breath, her own hand rising slowly, steadily. She felt the eyes of a few people on her, then more as the moderator scanned the room. "Yes, the woman in the gray suit in the third row," the moderator announced. Amelia stood, the spotlight, or rather the attention of thousands, suddenly on her. Her voice, usually soft, projected with an unexpected clarity, honed by her internal rehearsals. "Mr. Thorne," she began, her gaze unwavering as she met his. Viridian Connect prides itself on its advanced AI matching. However, various user metrics and independent data analysis suggest a significant bias within the algorithm, particularly regarding profiles that don't conform to certain conventional societal ideals. Are you aware that your algorithm, rather than fostering genuine connection, appears to be actively filtering out diverse user preferences, potentially pushing users towards more profitable, yet less compatible, interactions? A murmur rippled through the audience. Alex's confident smile wavered, replaced by a flicker of annoyance. He recognized the challenge, the intelligence in her question. He leaned into the microphone, his tone shifting from grand visionary to slightly defensive. "Thank you for that insightful question," he said, a touch of condescension in his voice. "Our AI is continuously learning and evolving. Any perceived bias is merely a function of its sophisticated deep learning, adapting to optimize user engagement and satisfaction. We prioritize all our users, and our data scientists work tirelessly to ensure fairness and inclusivity. Perhaps," he added, a dismissive wave of his hand, "some users simply haven't provided enough data for the algorithm to fully understand their unique preferences." He paused, then added, his gaze sweeping over the audience but pointedly avoiding Amelia's. "We are committed to delivering the best possible experience for millions. Sometimes, The best possible experience means a slightly more streamlined approach for the benefit of the majority. His dismissal was polite, practiced, and utterly infuriating. He hadn't answered her question. Not truly. He had brushed her off as just another disgruntled user, an overzealous competitor, someone whose unique preferences were simply too niche for his grand, commercialized vision of connection. He hadn't recognized her, not even now, standing directly before him, a ghost of his past, a living embodiment of the very flaw she was challenging. The humiliation was a fresh sting, but it was quickly overshadowed by a surge of righteous anger. From a dimly lit box seat overlooking the stage, Julian Vance observed the exchange, a faint smile playing on his lips. He had noticed Amelia's meticulous questions, her quiet persistence, and the precision with which she had articulated her concerns. Interesting, he thought. A little too smart for her own good, and a little too insistent. He had recognized the distinct, almost clinical analytical approach in her questions. She wasn't just a random user. She was someone who understood algorithms, someone who could pose a genuine threat. He saw her as a potential problem, a loose end that needed to be tied up. But a problem, in Julian's world, could also be an opportunity. Perhaps she could be exploited, her insights twisted to his own advantage. As Amelia, her heart pounding, sat back down, Julian's gaze lingered on her. He had a reputation for spotting talent, and for co-opting it for his own ends. He had seen the subtle flicker of recognition, or perhaps curiosity, in Alex's eyes when Amelia had first spoken. Alex might have dismissed her publicly, but Julian suspected the question had landed deeper than Alex let on. He watched as Amelia opened her laptop, her fingers already flying across the keyboard, no doubt analyzing Alex's evasive response. Julian made a mental note. This woman, Amelia, was intelligent, resourceful, and clearly held a grudge against Viridian Connect, a grudge he could perhaps leverage. He pulled out his own tablet, typing a quick encrypted message to his assistant. He needed Amelia's contact information, her professional background, anything that could give him an edge. He would approach her after the keynote, under the guise of concern. Perhaps offer her a behind-the-scenes tour of Viridian Connect, a tantalizing glimpse into the heart of the beast she sought to expose. It was a classic trap, and Julian was a master at setting them. He would offer her an olive branch, plant false hope, and then, when she least expected it, expose her perceived weakness or, even better, use her insights against Alex. He would create a deadline, a subtle pressure to accept his offer, ensuring she was operating under his terms. The game, for Julian, was about power, and Amelia, unknowingly, had just become a crucial piece on his board. The arena for the ultimate test would be Viridian Connect itself, where Amelia would stand alone against Julian's machinations, with Alex still blissfully, frustratingly oblivious. The invitation to Viridian Connect's headquarters had arrived with an air of sophisticated charm, a sleek digital missive from Julian Vance himself. He'd lauded Amelia's insightful questions at the conference, expressing a desire for her unique perspective on the app's ethical development. Amelia, however, was no fool. She saw through the thinly veiled flattery, recognizing it for the trap it was. Julian was not interested in her perspective. He was interested in neutralizing a perceived threat, or perhaps in extracting information he could weaponize. Yet, she accepted. This wasn't about trust. It was about strategy. This was her chance to walk into the lion's den, to gather the irrefutable evidence she needed to dismantle Viridian Connect's deceptive facade from within. Amelia arrived at the shimmering glass tower that housed Viridian Connect, its minimalist lobby a stark contrast to the churning unease in her stomach. She was directed to the upper floors, where Julian Vance greeted her with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. His handshake was firm, almost possessive. "Amelia, so glad you could make it," he purred, his voice a smooth, unsettling balm. Alex is unfortunately tied up with investor calls, but I'd be delighted to give you the grand tour myself, especially our data center. I understand you have a keen interest in algorithms. He led her through brightly lit corridors, past bustling open-plan offices, where developers stared intently at glowing screens. Amelia's eyes, however, weren't on the sleek design or the happy, engaged employees Julian pointed out. Her gaze was analytical, dissecting the network architecture, noting the visible security protocols, and assessing the general atmosphere. She observed the subtle tension in some of the developers' shoulders, the quick glances exchanged when Julian wasn't looking, small cracks in the polished veneer. Finally, they arrived at the server room, a cathedral of blinking lights and humming machinery. The air was cool and dry, filled with the faint ozone scent of electricity. Rows upon rows of servers hummed, processing countless lines of code, managing the digital lives of millions. Julian gestured grandly. This, Amelia, is the beating heart of Viridian Connect. Our advanced AI, our proprietary algorithms. It all lives here. Unseen, unheard, constantly refining itself. He paused, his gaze fixed on her, looking for a reaction. Perhaps you'd like a closer look at our primary data stream. We're always proud to demonstrate our transparency. Amelia's internal alarm bells screamed. Transparency. This was too easy, too inviting. She knew Julian was baiting her, hoping she would try to access something, say something incriminating, or simply be awed into submission. But she was prepared. Certainly, she replied, her voice calm, a slight tilt of her head. I'd be fascinated to see how your transparency translates into tangible data. Julian led her to a console where a complex data visualization pulsed on a large monitor. It displayed real-time user metrics, engagement rates, match percentages, user retention. He began to explain the impressive growth curves, highlighting the success stories generated by Viridian Connect. But as he spoke, Amelia's eyes scanned the underlying code, the subtle anomalies she had detected during her remote investigation. Julian, she interjected, her tone deceptively casual. Your match percentages are remarkably consistent, even across wildly disparate demographics. That's quite a feat for a truly adaptive AI. It almost suggests a predefined outcome. Wouldn't you say? Julian's smile tightened, a flicker of irritation in his eyes. Our AI is simply that good at finding compatibility. Amelia, it's designed to optimize for long-term user satisfaction, which inherently leads to higher match rates. Amelia hummed non-committally. Her fingers, subtle as a whisper, danced across the console's keyboard, seemingly adjusting the display to get a better view. In reality, she was executing a pre-written script, a silent command that began to subtly redirect the data stream, not to an external network, which would be immediately flagged, but to a secure, partitioned section of Viridian Connect's own internal server, a section she had discovered was used for archiving old, low-priority internal communications. She was planting a delayed digital time bomb. Take this chart, for instance, Amelia continued, her voice gaining a quiet, authoritative edge as she pointed at a graph displaying user retention. If your AI is truly unbiased, why do we see a disproportionate drop-off rate among users whose profiles contain keywords related to niche interests or non-traditional lifestyles? It almost looks like intentional filtering. Or perhaps, she added, her gaze fixed on Julian, a deliberate suppression of unprofitable demographics. Julian's composure began to fray. He hadn't expected her to be so direct, so sharp. He leaned closer to the monitor, trying to find fault with her observation. That's a ridiculous accusation, he scoffed. Our AI is designed for efficiency. Perhaps those niche users simply aren't suited to our platform. Or perhaps, Amelia countered, her voice now a precise, cutting whisper, the platform isn't suited to them because it's been engineered to exclude them. Look at this data. Julian, the success you're boasting about isn't organic, it's manufactured. Your algorithm is rigged to favor profiles that generate quick engagement, regardless of genuine compatibility. It's a marketing funnel, not a matchmaker. Julian's face darkened. He grabbed the mouse, trying to revert the display. You don't know what you're talking about. Oh, but I do, Amelia said, her eyes flashing with quiet intensity. And I know who does know. You. You've been manipulating these metrics. Haven't you? Inflating user engagement, downplaying complaints, ensuring the data always painted a rosy picture for Alex and the board. Why? To push Alex towards a more streamlined, i.e., cynical version of his vision. To justify your own position as the practical one. Julian stared at her, his jaw clenching. He hadn't expected her to be so perceptive, so bold. You think you're so smart, don't you? He hissed, his voice low and venomous. This is my company, not Alex's idealistic fantasy. He talks about connection, but I make the real money. I control the numbers. I've been weeding out the dead weight, the unprofitable users, the ones who drag down our metrics. Your kind. For example, you think Alex would actually understand you. He barely understands his own dreams anymore. He's too busy being a figurehead. I'm the one pulling the strings. His resentment, long simmering, bubbled to the surface. He revealed details of his sabotage, his secret manipulations, his contempt for Alex's perceived naivete, thinking he was simply talking to an insignificant, soon-to-be discredited woman. What Julian didn't know was that Amelia, in her calculated foresight, had not only rerouted the data stream, but had also activated a subtle audio feed, a feature embedded in the secure server she had accessed, originally designed for remote troubleshooting. This feed, now live, was broadcasting Julian's increasingly agitated admissions. Meanwhile, a floor above, Alex Thorne was pacing his spacious office, a faint furrow in his brow. The conversation with the woman from the conference, Amelia, had stuck with him. Her questions, so precise, so pointed, had resonated in a way he couldn't shake. He dismissed the thought as a lingering annoyance, but then, a strange flicker on the large, wall-mounted display usually reserved for internal company announcements caught his eye. It was his private internal archive server, showing unexpected activity. And then, an image materialized on the screen, followed by a live audio feed. It was Julian and Amelia. Alex froze. He listened, his eyes wide with disbelief, then dawning horror, as Julian's voice, amplified and clear, filled the room. This is my company, not Alex's idealistic fantasy. I control the numbers. I've been weeding out the dead weight, the unprofitable users, the ones who drag down our metrics. Your kind, for example. I'm the one pulling the strings. Just then, Evelyn Reed, the shrewd board member, walked into Alex's office, followed by two other key investors, for an impromptu, unscheduled meeting to discuss recent user churn data. They stopped dead in their tracks, their eyes widening as Julian's voice continued to spill his vile confessions from the screen. On the monitor, Amelia remained calm, her quiet composure a stark contrast to Julian's panicked, venomous outburst. She stood tall amidst the humming servers, her head held high, the subtle power of her intellect radiating silently. Julian, consumed by his own unraveling, didn't notice the slight delay in the network response, or the fact that the data on his screen was no longer mirroring what was being projected in Alex's office. He was trapped in his own web of deceit, exposed by the very technology he sought to manipulate. Alex's face cycled through a spectrum of emotions: initial confusion, then profound shock, followed by a raw, guttural rage. But as he watched Amelia, her profile sharp and resolute on the screen, something clicked. The quiet intelligence in her eyes, the familiar intensity of her gaze when she was focused on a problem. The memories, long dormant, flooded back the shared late nights, the obscure coding jokes, the easy camaraderie of two minds perfectly aligned. The girl from his past, the one he had never truly seen, was standing there, radiating quiet strength, exposing the rot at the core of his company. The woman he had dismissed at the conference, the woman his own app had rejected, was in fact his childhood friend, a brilliant mind he had overlooked. Humiliation, not for Julian, but for himself, washed over him, a wave of sickening regret. He had been blind, truly blind, consumed by ambition, manipulated by his trusted COO, and in doing so, had failed his own vision, and utterly failed to recognize someone who had once meant so much to him. The board members in his office were stunned, their faces a mixture of disbelief and anger at Julian's staggering deception. The true scope of Viridian Connect's systemic manipulation and Julian's betrayal was laid bare for all to see. Amelia, standing quiet and triumphant amidst the blinking lights of the server room, had achieved her vindication. The silence that followed Julian Vance's confession in Alex Thorne's office was absolute, broken only by the low hum of the projector. The images on the screen, Julian's agitated face, Amelia's quiet resolve, burned into the minds of everyone present. Evelyn Reed, usually composed, was pale with shock, her gaze fixed on Alex. The other board members shifted uncomfortably, their faces a mixture of disbelief and simmering fury. Julian's carefully constructed facade had crumbled, exposing a cynical, greedy manipulator. Down in the server room, Julian, finally realizing the silence from Amelia was too complete, too perfect, looked up. His eyes, wide with dawning horror, landed on the subtle flicker of the network light. He saw the projected image of himself and his own voice, echoing back at him from the speakers he hadn't noticed were active. His carefully laid trap had sprung back on him. He lunged for the console, his fingers scrambling. But it was too late. The data was already out, his confession already heard. He whirled on Amelia, his face contorted with rage. You set me up." Amelia met his furious gaze, her own eyes steady and unwavering. "You set yourself up, Julian," she said, her voice devoid of triumph, merely stating a fact. The truth simply found a way to surface. Before Julian could react further, the heavy server room door burst open. Two burly security guards, alerted by a frantic call from Alex's office, entered swiftly. Julian, flailing and cursing, was apprehended. His downfall was swift and public, a harsh, immediate consequence for his deceit. His access badges were confiscated, his company phone immediately deactivated. As he was led away, his protests fading down the corridor, the sheer weight of his betrayal hung heavy in the air. Legal repercussions, undoubtedly, would follow, ensuring his punishment was proportionate to the widespread fraud he had perpetuated. Upstairs, the atmosphere in Alex's office was thick with a grim realization. The board members' initial outrage slowly gave way to a deeper sense of betrayal and disappointment. Alex, however, was wrestling with something far more profound. He had spent the last few minutes staring at Amelia's face on the screen, seeing the quiet, intelligent girl he had known, now a formidable woman. The echoes of his past, his own blindness, and his recent dismissiveness of her at the conference resonated with a sickening clarity. The realization of what he had allowed to fester within his company, under his nose, because he had been too caught up in the superficial metrics and grand visions, hit him hard. He cleared the screen, the image of Amelia and Julian fading. He turned to Evelyn Reed, his voice hoarse with genuine remorse. "Evelyn, I can't apologize enough. Julian's actions were a direct subversion of everything I believed this company stood for. We will cooperate fully with any investigation, and we will rebuild Viridian Connect with integrity at its core." Evelyn, ever the pragmatist, nodded slowly. "Apologies are a start, Alex, but action is what matters. This has severely damaged Viridian's reputation. We need to demonstrate a fundamental shift, a commitment to ethical AI that goes beyond mere rhetoric. Her gaze then softened slightly as she looked at him. And you, Alex, need to seriously reevaluate who you trust. Alex nodded, his gaze distant, lost in thought. He knew what he had to do. He left the board members to begin damage control, his mind already formulating a plan. He walked down to the server room, the air still thick with the scent of ozone, the memory of Julian's betrayal a bitter taste in his mouth. He found Amelia standing alone, staring at the humming servers, her shoulders slightly slumped, as if the adrenaline had finally left her. "Amelia," he said, his voice quiet, almost hesitant. She turned, her eyes meeting his. For a moment, the vast humming room seemed to shrink, and they were just two people, connected by a tangled past and a shared, unexpected present. "Alex," she replied, her voice soft, but without a trace of the anger she had every right to feel. He took a step closer, his hands clasped awkwardly in front of him. I don't even know where to begin," he started, his voice cracking slightly. "I'm so incredibly sorry. For Julian's deceit, for the algorithm's flaws, and for not seeing you. Not then, and not now. Not truly." He gestured vaguely at the console where her silent digital takedown had occurred. "Your questions at the conference, I brushed you off. I didn't listen. And I was so unbelievably wrong." His remorse was palpable, raw and genuine. He wasn't the arrogant CEO anymore. He was a man humbled by a profound failure, both professional and personal. Amelia looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw the weariness in his eyes, the genuine regret etched on his face. The sting of past hurt was still there, a faint echo, but it was overshadowed by the current gravity of the situation. "It's not just about me, Alex," she said. "It's about the hundreds, maybe thousands of users your app dismissed. The promise of connection turned into a calculated manipulation for profit. That's what really matters." Alex nodded slowly. "You're absolutely right. And I want to fix it. Truly fix it." He paused, taking a deep breath. "Amelia, your insights today, your brilliance, it's unparalleled. You understood the core flaws of this system, the very ones Julian exploited, far better than I did. I need someone who understands ethics, who understands human connection, and who understands data at the highest level. I want to offer you a pivotal role. The head of ethical AI development at Viridian Connect. You would have full autonomy to rebuild this system from the ground up, to ensure its algorithms are truly fair, truly inclusive, truly designed for genuine connection, not for profit, for people." Amelia stared at him, stunned. It wasn't just a job offer, it was a blank canvas, an opportunity to implement her deepest convictions about technology, to rectify the very system that had dismissed her. It was a chance to transform an industry, to turn a cynical machine into a force for good. It was the recognition she had quietly yearned for, not just as a data scientist, but as a person with a vision. "You'd trust me with that?" she asked, a hint of incredulity in her voice. "More than anyone," Alex replied, his gaze firm, earnest. "I've been blind. I need someone to help me see clearly again." Later that evening, long after the security guards had gone and the board members had dispersed, Amelia and Alex sat in his vast, tastefully appointed office. The city lights twinkled outside the panoramic windows, a glittering tapestry of lives intertwined. They didn't dwell on their past romantic connection or the awkwardness of their reunion. Instead, their conversation was focused, professional, yet tinged with a quiet, shared understanding. Amelia spoke passionately about her vision for Viridian Connect implementing transparent algorithms, developing genuine compatibility metrics that prioritized user values over shallow attractiveness scores, and building a platform that empowered individuals rather than commodifying their desires. Alex listened intently, his initial weariness slowly replaced by a renewed sense of purpose. He asked incisive questions, demonstrating his own formidable intellect, now redirected towards ethical innovation. "It won't be easy," Alex admitted, leaning back in his chair. "Rebuilding trust, undoing the damage Julian caused, it's a monumental task." "I know," Amelia replied, a faint smile touching her lips. "But it's a necessary one, and for the first time, I think it's possible." Their conversation flowed, seamless and engaging, the way it had been all those years ago in his garage, when the world of code was a shared language, a boundless frontier. The strange twist of fate that had brought them together, through rejection and deceit, now felt less like a wound and more like a profound, unexpected opportunity. The office, once a symbol of Alex's ambition and Julian's manipulation, now felt like a space of shared purpose, a quiet beginning to a new chapter for Viridian Connect, and for them both. The silence that had once defined Amelia's life, a silence of lonely contemplation, was slowly, beautifully, giving way to the hum of shared endeavor. 1 year later, the sprawling headquarters of Viridian Connect hummed with a different kind of energy. The slick, impersonal veneer Julian Vance had fostered had been meticulously stripped away, replaced by an atmosphere of collaborative innovation and genuine purpose. At the heart of this transformation was Amelia Thorne, now the universally respected head of ethical AI development. Her office, once Alex's imposing domain, had been subtly reshaped, filled with whiteboards scrawled with complex algorithms and elegant flowcharts, her quiet intensity a palpable force for good. Under her guidance, Viridian Connect had undergone a radical metamorphosis. The advanced AI that had once been a cynical marketing ploy was now truly advanced, transparent, and user-centric. Amelia had overseen a complete overhaul of the matching algorithm, replacing Julian's biased, profit-driven parameters with sophisticated models that prioritized genuine compatibility, shared values, and psychological nuances. Niche interests were no longer filtered out. They were celebrated. Diverse lifestyles were understood, not dismissed. The app's success was no longer measured by fleeting engagement metrics, but by the burgeoning number of long-term, meaningful connections it fostered. News articles now praised Viridian Connect not for its market share, but for its groundbreaking commitment to ethical technology, a testament to Amelia's unwavering vision. Amelia's apartment, too, reflected this profound shift. It was still meticulously organized, a reflection of her inherent nature, but it now held a warmth it had previously lacked. The silence was often broken by the gentle murmur of a video call with Clara, or the lively chatter of a new circle of friends, colleagues from Viridian, fellow data scientists she'd connected with through her work, even a few successful matches from the app she'd helped transform. Her evenings were no longer just about code. They were about shared meals, animated discussions about the future of AI, and quiet moments of contentment. The quiet hum of her life was no longer one of lonely contemplation, but of vibrant, purposeful existence. Paying it forward, remembering the sting of her own rejection and the silent struggles she had faced as a young woman in a male-dominated field, Amelia had established the Ethical Algorithm Initiative within Viridian Connect. This program was more than just a corporate social responsibility project. It was her personal mission. She dedicated 2 afternoons a week to leading coding workshops for high school and university students, particularly focusing on young women from underserved communities. She taught them not just the mechanics of programming, but the philosophy behind it, the power of data, the responsibility that came with creating technology, and the ethical implications of every line of code. She spoke openly about her own experiences, her moments of doubt, her quiet resilience, and the importance of advocating for what was right, even when it felt intimidating. She saw the same quiet determination in some of her students that she recognized in herself, and she nurtured it. Amelia delighted in watching their faces light up as they debugged their first complex program. or as they presented their own ethically designed mini-apps. She showed them that their unique talents were not only valuable, but essential to shaping a better, more equitable digital future. Her impact was profound, creating a ripple effect of empowerment that extended far beyond the walls of Viridian Connect. The symbolic image one sun-dappled afternoon. Amelia walked through the sprawling urban park, a gentle breeze rustling through the leaves overhead. She wore a light, contented smile, a stark contrast to the guarded expression she had once carried. Her phone chimed, and she glanced down, not with the anxious anticipation of a rejected user, but with the quiet satisfaction of a mentor. It was a message from Maya, one of her brightest mentees, excitedly detailing her acceptance into a prestigious university's computer science program. Amelia's heart swelled with pride. Beside her, a figure walked in comfortable silence. It was Alex Thorne, no longer the distant CEO, but a quiet, supportive presence in her life. Their relationship had evolved beyond mere professional collaboration. It wasn't a whirlwind romance, but something deeper, more profound, a bond forged in shared purpose and mutual respect, built on the solid ground of two minds that finally saw each other for who they truly were. They had found a quiet rhythm, a shared understanding that transcended words. He didn't need to speak. His presence was enough. Amelia looked up, her gaze sweeping across the vibrant park, children laughing, couples strolling, friends sharing quiet conversations. She saw the connections, real and authentic, blossoming around her. She had been rejected by an algorithm, only to rewrite its very rules, and in doing so, had rewritten her own destiny. She had not only found her place, but had created a space for others to find theirs. The scar on her wrist, once a hidden detail, was now a faint reminder of a path bravely taken. A quiet strength that had transformed not just her own life, but the lives of many others, embodying the profound impact of being truly seen and truly seeing others. Her quiet strength had transformed a world. She looked towards the horizon, her eyes bright with a future she had helped build, a future of genuine connection, ethical technology, and boundless possibility. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming stories.